Hey Romain, how is going?
Very good. What about you, Adam?
Oh, perfect. So I saw your tweet that you are not happy about microprofile. This is why I invite you. But what you are doing right now? You're still with Java at least?
Yeah, Java and a lot of Kubernetes. So for now, I'm doing service in banking area,
Hmm.
but we are building a pretty big system with a lot of batches and web services in SOAP, JSON-RPC, things like that. And we are all deploying to Kubernetes and relying a lot on Kubernetes.
Okay. And how you like Kubernetes?
It's it's not bad. I mean, if you look what we were doing before Kubernetes, like 10 years ago, it's exactly the same actually. We are still building health checks, metrics, log collecting, and things like that. Kubernetes is just bringing a standard layer on top of that. So it's a good thing. And the fact it is a standard, de facto standard, is good because you can go on any cloud now. So I like it.
That's interesting because you say no, Kubernetes is a standard, but because if you just take Kubernetes, which ingress controller to pick, which health check to pick, which health check is standardized, but which matrix is what I wanted to say to pick. It is actually not standardized. There are, if you go to CNCF, you get 20 options for every piece. So I would say with Kubernetes, it's even less likely that you will succeed by migrating from one cloud to another, unless you are take the Kubernetes with you. So if you say, okay, I'm provisioning my own Kubernetes, that's a different story.
Yes and no, because so yeah, that's actually the game to be portable in between cloud providers. It's to install your own infrastructure. So you don't rely on the cloud provider for, let's say, load balancers, metrics collect, and things like that. But you install your own Prometheus, for instance. You install your own MinIO for the blob storage, etc. This way, you are really portable.
Okay, so I see. So if your strategy is now to use more or less just EC2 or Azure machines, then and not the cloud infrastructure at all, then I see, because then you take the cloud with you, right? Because you're not relying, not you mentioned MinIO, which would mean you're not even using S3, right?
So yeah, you can use MinIO as a pass-through to S3 or not. It depends the cloud. If you are on Amazon, indeed MinIO will just be a proxy on S3.
Hmm.
If you are on Azure, it will not. It will just fake S3 API.
Okay, so this is a complete different strategy what I'm doing, but that's interesting. So, but at least the direction is clear. So it's okay. Portability is king. So this is the thing to do. But then you will need to create your own Kubernetes distribution almost. You can say, okay, if I'm doing Kubernetes, I'm using MinIO, I use Prometheus, I use which ingress controller are you using?
NGX in general.
Nginx, and this is my set of Kubernetes ecosystem which runs everywhere. So this is your decision, but if a different project will decide differently, there is no portability at all, right? So you are more or less a unique Kubernetes snowflake, not flake,
Yeah,
snowflake.
yeah, 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 yeah. So actually, when I say Kubernetes is portable, it's really about the fact you push a state through an API,
Mhm.
and then you install what you want. So if you want to, so Kubernetes is portable by itself. What is not portable is a Kubernetes instance in a cloud provider. But
Exactly.
it's something specific. But
Yeah,
Kubernetes itself stays portable because you just have an API and the API is standard.
exactly. But this is exactly what I have the issues in the cloud provider, because if you go to AWS has IAM, this identity management, and Azure has the AD, and Kubernetes has an own user management. The same is true for networking. So if I set up Kubernetes on AWS, I have to care about VPC, subnets, security groups. I have to do the same on Azure, but the tooling is completely different, and the resources are completely different to provision, and even the regions are completely different. For instance, in Asia, Frankfurt is almost not existing, and you can perfectly use Frankfurt on AWS. So I would say this is the issue, the layer between the cloud provider. This is where I spend lots of my time, to for the infrastructure of the cloud. And if you have Kubernetes, you have more or less two clouds, because you have the public cloud and Kubernetes, which is also supposed to be a cloud. So I like Kubernetes on premise. I use I never use Kubernetes in public clouds. But on premise, OpenShift and Rancher, whatever, I just like it. But I don't try, to create my own my own Kubernetes distro. I try to pick existing one.
But actually, I use Kubernetes Key 0S
Okay.
when it's on premise.
Mhm.
In the cloud, on Amazon, it's EKS. On Azure, it's
AKS.
something like
So
that.
you're using actually the EKS distro and
Yeah.
AKS distro.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're
And
using the Fargate on AWS or using the ECS? Use the Fargate version, so the serverless version of Kubernetes or the full one?
No,
The
not
full.
the serverless one. But it stays portable because we are abstracting what is not portable actually.
Okay, but this is interesting take. So I didn't knew that you're doing Kubernetes. So this is what I was interested in. So know how it plays out. What I tend to do is just a side note. What I'm not interested in is the portability. What I would like to have is just a container orchestrator. So something which starts and stops containers, which is good enough for projects if you're not building products. So in my case, I use for instance ECS Fargate on AWS, and on Azure there are different solutions. This is the ACI is the simplest one, Azure Container Instances, or Azure App Service, or Azure Container Apps, I think. And this is like, there's still Kubernetes behind the scenes, but I don't have to care about this. And the provisioning is that simple. So I just say, a short JSON file, this is my Docker image, and here we go. So this is my way, because if I have to port my application from AWS to Azure, it's just a matter of, fiddling with the JSON, which is short. And it's very similar in both cases. This is my portability story, completely different. It's actually opposite of yours, which is interesting.
But that's because you just have an application, right?
Yeah, I'm not building projects, and applications means in projects we have sometimes 20 microservices. This is more or less a huge system, but huge, not as huge as we did 10 years before. Maybe a team of 10, 15 developers is building this over, I would say, 3 years or something like this. And this is what works well. And absolute side note. And what I do more and more, I'm not even the recent 2 years, I'm not even shipping containers anymore. I'm building microprofile apps which run as an AWS Lambda or Azure function. This is also surprising how well it actually is working. But now I mentioned microprofile several times. So for unknown reasons, you've wrote a tweet to me. I don't know whether to me that you don't like microprofile anymore, or you are not using microprofile anymore. And so why that? So because I didn't want to respond with a tweet, because you cannot discuss on Twitter really such things. So, okay, I will invite you. Let's have a chat why you don't like microprofile.
So let's go back on why I liked Java EE at the time, so Jakarta EE now. So Jakarta EE or Java EE is an abstraction for multiple vendors on a common API. And this is the key value of this kind of spec. You can get portability between vendors, switch between libraries without rewriting the application, but you can still get some vendor features under the hood. That's really good, but you never get all the power of library without abstraction, because it's an abstraction by design.
Like Kubernetes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the value of this kind of abstraction is the stability. It means you don't have to rewrite your application every year.
Oh, I see.
But microprofile has in its contract the fact it can break every year. So they don't do it for all specs, but they do it for at least one spec of the profile. And for me, that's an issue, because they are really breaking for no added value for end user. If you look the metrics API, for example, they broke it. They didn't add any feature for end user. It's still exactly the same, but you can't compile anymore. You have to change your code, and that's a big issue for me. The other thing is the API is not compliant to the way we are writing applications today. If you look at the ELF spec, for example, the design is, this one is really interesting, because what you need to implement ELF endpoint for Kubernetes, for example, and that's their target, It's just a plain servlet doing some check on your resources or remote dependencies, something like that. So you just do a servlet. And what they did is an abstraction. So you get a registry of checks, and they abstracted the servlet, so you don't write it anymore. And they just call everything in the registry in a synchronous manner. So if you have some remote dependencies to check, some database to check, etc., you need to execute all checks sequentially. Whereas actually, if you do it yourself, you just need to call an async API, and you can do all the check concurrently, but not blocking anything. So in terms of resources and response time, it's way better to just do your own endpoint. And actually,
but the health, this is what I don't understand, because for me it works good enough. So if you look at the health check, this is liveness and readiness. So we have two annotations in MicroProfile, and Kubernetes also needs both actually, because the live check is to restart the container if it doesn't work, and the readiness is for the load balancer, more or less. But you can absolutely do it in asynchronous way, because you can say liveness, and behind the scenes you can use executor service, perform all the checks concurrently, and then come back. So there's no difference to servlet if you like. You can build it synchronously or asynchronously. So this is now up to you, right? You can have a completable future which calls. You can even send our asynchronous CDI event. Wait until everything comes back and return, for instance.
Sure. So it means you replace your 10 health checks by a single one. You do in a custom manner.
Yeah.
So you are not using health spec.
I'm using health check as a facade to my own stuff, right? I didn't have the problem from what you mentioned right now, but the solution could be, to extend the spec to have asynchronous health checks.
Yeah, sure. It's just an example that the spec is not matching the world we are right now.
Yeah, but this, if you would just suggest it, I'm pretty sure it is going to be accepted. Because health is tiny, and no, they are not like it?
I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure we discussed it, and Red Hat is just doing what they want. That's also why they don't want to MicroProfile to join Jakarta AE, but because they don't control everything in Jakarta. And it's the same for metrics, actually. If you look metrics, it's the same architecture.
Metrics is interesting, because I already had a discussion with Erin Schnabel, and she doesn't like, the metrics. She said how it's pronounced, micrometer, I think. Hopefully it's pronounced correctly. She likes micrometer. I don't like micrometer at all. What I really liked, actually, so step back. Erin Schnabel was absolutely right. So there were some bugs and something didn't behave as she expected. But I'm expecting actually less than you actually, or she was expecting. So what I would like to have is usually counters. This is what I need. You have usually no business process. And what I would like to have is multiple registries of counters. So I can see, I would like to map the counters to my business components. So I see, that many orders were active and not active. And you have to build this with micrometer by yourself. And the old MicroProfile metric spec did it out of the box, which was really convenient to me. What I'm less interested in the cloud is, I would say, even pointless, is like timed. Because what usually happens, I have my HTTP API gateway or load balancers, and they are providing good enough metrics out of the box. So if you are using the CloudWatch provides this for you, this service, and I can have metrics and alerts and insights. So this is less of a thing. But even in a Lambda case, which is serverless, and it, as you could probably know, Lambda is not starting and stopping all the time, but sometimes it remains hot. It is hot for several calls. It is even then convenient to have metrics, to have additional insight, to say, okay, how fast were the last calls, for instance. So this is what I can tell you. So it is maybe if you use all the features, it is even maybe broken. But because I use a subset, which is gauges and counters, I never had an issue.
Well, there is still an issue. So maybe you don't eat it because you are pretty rich. But the fact, so the design is a registry and an endpoint exposing the whole registry, more or less. And that's an issue because if you have some normalized metrics and your company is expecting some metrics, you have to remap the endpoint or re-implement it. It's way more work than just implementing, once again, a servlet exposing the metrics.
But why that? Because if I inject what I'm doing, add inject, I think metric registry. Then I do the thing, with counter. If the counter is not existing, it creates counter on the fly, and then I say increment. This is all. This one-liner.
Yeah.
If I would write a servlet first on Quarkus, I would have to include complete new extension to make it work, and servlet is actually far more work than this.
Not really. So if you look, okay, let's step back and look any application which is not Java. So look Node, Go, or whatever, and look their Kubernetes version. Each time, what they do, they just register an endpoint for health, for metrics, and other stuff. And so for us in Java ecosystem, if we have a servlet container, it's a servlet. If we have a JSON-RPC, it's an endpoint. That's nothing more. And then you just return what you need. It's not a lot of work. And the big advantage there is you control the front end, the rendering. Whereas if you use the spec, if you don't work around the spec, you rely on the front end of the spec, which is way more verbose than what you need. And for metrics, it's a huge impact because it means instead of having 20 metrics, you'll get 100 or something like that. And in terms of storage, it means 5 times more. So it means you will, regarding the retention, you get 5 times less duration. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
but what you are saying is this. What I also don't like. What I would like to have is, I think this called scopes or registry. You know what I mean? So for me, this is what I really would like to have is like my multiple subsets or namespaces inside the registry. And this is a specific name for it. What I don't like at all, we have now vendor and application, and the third one I forgot. So there are
base.
3 base, vendor. I never use base. I never use vendor. And what I would like to have is within the application namespace, multiple subsystems. This would be great for me because I'm only interested in my orders, and I will just see the orders metrics. And I actually had a chat with the metrics spec. Maybe you were also there. I don't know, but we were both, right? We both suggested the same. And the answer was no, because we would like to have one endpoint without any scopes, and therefore we are using micrometer. And I look at the micrometer, I was like, this is just stupid because I will have to use, I have to build it by myself. So then you are right. Then I would rather build a servlet before I would use micrometer to compute my counters to have the namespaces. Then I would complete it with you. So I have a servlet with a static concurrent hash map. I'm done, right? Yeah.
But that's actually something we did to enable multiple registry in the Geronimo implementation.
Very good.
But the spec rejected it, and the micrometer issue is bigger than just the metrics issue. It's the same in open tracing spec. They are using external library in the API. So the tracer API for open tracing, micrometer, and it's not stable.
Romain, by the way, how your first name is pronounced perfectly? Say it. Romain.
Yeah.
I'm completely with you with the metrics. So what I don't understand, if they say, micrometer is the future, why we need spec at all? Because if there is just one micrometer, what's the point, right? So what is the added value? And if I use the micrometer and write everything by myself, I will use the servlet because I don't like micrometer because my metrics are very simple. So I'm completely with you. So I would say the added value of MicroProfile in my eyes would be a simplification, providing a subset of micrometer with or without micrometer, completely hidden, and just having counter would be a good start. And in the cloud, I would say there's less necessity right now to have, the time measuring on the endpoints, because I assume you are also doing this on Kubernetes level and Nginx and, and Prometheus. So there is no need to do this again inside a container. So metrics, I'm with you. So I don't understand the direction they are going, but I still use the MicroProfile metrics. So if you are in Quarkus, you can use the small RAI metrics or the micrometer. I never use the micrometer because you are right. So I don't even see the point, because I had a chat and they said, okay, in the cloud maybe they would like to use Datadog. Not everything is Prometheus. And I was like, yeah, but if we leave the Prometheus open telemetry path, then I could use CloudWatch metrics out of the box without any. What's the point then? Because there is only one standard, and this is the Prometheus, OpenMetrics, OpenTelemetry standard, that there is nothing else, right? So this is my opinion. So I'm with you actually with it, but it's not like it doesn't render the entire microprofile worthless for me. I'm just not using all the features from metrics, right?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point, the micrometer one, because if you look, the ecosystem of microprofile today is just Smolery. So basically, at Geronimo, we gave up to implement everything. So I guess the only implementation will be Smolery. So microprofile is no more a spec; it's an implementation done by Red Hat and period. So it's just a product like anything. It's an Eclipse library at the end.
And Payara guys have own implementation of microprofile. Payara people have also own microprofile implementation.
I'm not sure they are not reusing part of Smolery.
I asked them several times, so there are parts are using Smolery, but there are lots of implemented by themselves. So there's from scratch implementation of microprofile.
Okay. I know Tommy is moving to Smolery as well because well at Apache we gave up. So okay, maybe Payara has its own implementation, but it's no more really a spec like it was before. So I guess they can just stop doing spec and just doing a library, and that's what Red Hat guys are liking actually, and that's why they want to stay at microprofile and not move to Jakarta. So yeah, that's really a governance issue for me, more than technical issue.
So then maybe I give you my points why I like microprofile. So how long are you developing Java?
10 plus years.
Yeah. So in 10 plus years means, as if we start a project, we already know what to expect, At the beginning of Java, as I started, every project was evaluation. So this was just, for me, extremely boring, period. Which logging framework to choose, which configuration to choose or whatever. With something like Jakarta or microprofile, you can cut off the entire discussion at the beginning. So not necessarily you just, agree to something. And Jakarta is fine for me. Microprofile is also fine for me. And what I need is a runtime. So we are not implementing runtimes by ourselves. I'm using mostly Quarkus in all my projects. And now the problem with Quarkus is very popular, and Quarkus ships with, a few hundred extensions. So if you are in a project, so you can imagine what happens. Every developer picks own favorite extension. What people don't understand is that such an extension is written, on holiday by one developer, and maybe it completely dies. So it means, it is, I have now the same problem I had, 15, 20 years ago with Quarkus, because it's, hey, there's everything is extension, we can do everything we like. It's like, yes, but, first security, what happens with patching and so forth. And the cool story is with Smolery, we say, okay, we add, if you would like to have an extension, look at Smolery first, because the chances are high. This is going to be a microprofile, and microprofile is not only used by Quarkus, it's also used, by Helidon, Tommy, hopefully. By the way, Tommy had its own microprofile implementation, right? The Apache one.
They are moving to Smolery.
Okay, but they had at least.
We had at Geronimo, but that's what I said. We gave up.
Okay, and are you still involved with Tommy, Roma?
A bit, very less than before, but a bit. Still a lot in Geronimo, and since Geronimo and Tommy are co-working, I still work for it.
So for me, it is like microprofile Jakarta EE. For me, it was like, the, how to call it, a self-constraining. Yeah. We know, this is good enough. Stop talking now. Go ahead and build the app. And this was great. So there was not a lot moving parts. So for me, it's even, microprofile in Jakarta is the same for me. So I pick, I know I need CDI everywhere. This is very stable. JSON-RPC everywhere. Very, very stable. In cloud change a bit, we use less JPA, not because JPA is wrong, but it's too expensive with the relational database, whatever. So not always, it's just economics. Yeah. So we use less JPA, I have to admit. Outside cloud was always JPA, all projects. NoSQL didn't make any sense on premise in most projects. On cloud it makes because it's cheaper, and not even cheaper. You don't have to provision the infrastructure. You don't have to care about backups, and this is actually the main point. And so JSON-RPC, CDI, config, huge part, microprofile config, it works everywhere. So it's also very, very stable. I never used the Jakarta config, so I always use the microprofile, the config property. Then sometimes metrics, as I said, counters, health checks always. And I have to tell, I misuse health checks as well to have a human endpoint which provides some basic information about the system. So if I ping it, I see some information. So this is not, the fine way. And I do even hacks with AWS Lambdas where we expose health checks which are polled by load balancer. So the Lambda remains hot. So some dirty tricks, but it's working. And what else? Servlet? Actually never. So I never use servlets in recent years because we have JAX-RS. And for servlets, I will have to add the Undertow extension in Quarkus. And we try to keep performance not the issue. It's more, the attack surface and updates. So we are not trying, to put too many dependencies, or no dependency would be the best. And what I appreciate the most in Jakarta days, we only had one dependency. That was the API. This was actually for me a huge part because, in every project, add the API and now we are talking. And maybe it's less so in your project. I'm a consultant. I saw, many concurrent projects at the same time. So for me, it was very easy to set everything up. This is Java 17. This is the dependency we go. If you remain longer in a project, it is less issue because you do the setup once and then you're just working with it, right? So I don't know what's in your project. I had, also to argue with many external companies in a single project, and everyone had, different idea what to do. And this was Jakarta and MicroProfile was a big escape for me just to say, this is the standard, do this first. If this doesn't work, then we are talking. And usually it was good enough to survive a project. So this is why I like it. Not necessarily because MicroProfile or Jakarta were the best. They were good enough and we could cut all the meetings, right? So this is like using boring technology.
Yeah, actually I agree. And that's where the stability of Java EE was good. Because if you don't get this stability, you can't say that actually.
Yeah.
But today, what we did at UPeak is to create what we call a U-ship. So it's just, let's say, a default stack.
Mm-hmm.
The goal was to have something lighter than the minimal profile of Java EE. Mm-hmm. So it's basically a CDI with an embedded servlet container and just a thin layer to do a JSON-RPC because GraphQL is just nothing. And that's it. So we still use Java EE or Jakarta EE, mm-hmm. But we dropped most of the high-level stack, let's say. Mm-hmm. And that's where just doing servlet to replace MicroProfile is pretty good because you fully control everything. You fully control something stupid in metrics spec is the naming. You don't control it for most of the metrics. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whereas in most company, you have some blueprint to say, if it is a pool, you need to name it this way. Mm-hmm. So just using just a plain servlet, you control everything, you do what you want, and it works everywhere. And it's pretty light in terms of final binary. I mean, we do an application, it's 10 meg, whereas if you do the same with Java EE or Spring, it's 80 megs. And it's also easier to go native this way because mm-hmm. you have a small set of dependencies. So you just run it through GraalVM or Arthur Maven plugin, and that's it. Whereas if you have a bigger stack, you add dependencies, you need to handle all dependencies mapping, mm-hmm. and it's a lot of work.
One question now, but why I didn't pick, for instance, Quarkus? Because Quarkus does a lot of tree shaking up front, they optimize the reflection. So why it is worth to create your own platform instead of using Quarkus, for instance?
Because, so Quarkus first is a single company project, or mm-hmm. whatever they say. Yeah. It's over complex. If you look the build, all the build step and
it is.
Yeah, it's really over complex. Look at Arthur code. It does the same thing. The abstraction is way simpler, and it's as efficient. So Quarkus is really a Red Hat project. Over complex. It does the stuff, but it's designed to sell support basically. So it works. But it's not something for you to own at the end. You see what I mean? You can't own the code and lead the code.
You're right. So I wouldn't use Quarkus to extend it. I use Quarkus as a runtime platform as is. This is where MicroProfile adds value. So my exit strategy is, if there is something wrong with Red Hat or Quarkus, I will immediately move to Helidon.
Okay.
So my project will work on Helidon. This is what we know. So this is or Micronaut. Micronaut, Quarkus, Helidon, and I start with Quarkus, is more popular. Everyone knows Quarkus. Everyone would like to do Quarkus in projects. So I say, okay, we're not using any Quarkus proprietary extensions. So if Red Hat loses, interest on Quarkus, we will move to Micronaut, Helidon, or I don't know, Piranha Cloud or whatever we get then, right? So this is actually the added value of MicroProfile, regardless whether it's stable or not stable, because a small migration 2 days is not a problem. Even if they will change, some annotations in metrics, I don't care. But I don't expect any changes in the CDI. If they will change a CDI, for instance, this is a huge amount of work. Or JAX-RS, if they change, if JAX-RS becomes unstable, then we have a problem. Metrics, okay, nice to have in the cloud anyway. Health checks, I'm happy with the health checks because we don't have such crazy, multi-level health checks. I have more smaller projects. What is the project you mentioned? Is it open source what you are using?
Uship.
What are you building now with the servlets and CDI, the entire platform?
So the application project is not open source, but the stack is on the UPIC GitHub.
UPIC?
Yeah, I can send you the link.
Yes, send me the link because I'm really interested. So I would like to look at this, and you can use the chat. I will put it to show notes. And this is Java alternative solution which works similar to Quarkus, you say, but it's easier to build extensions.
Yeah, so the main difference is we didn't put everything in the project. So you have the stack in the project. If you want to go native, you can use Geronimo Arthur plugin. And to integrate with Kubernetes, you just do servlets, basically.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so you're not... Okay, so this makes sense. Good that we talk about that, because if, the servlets are part of your platform anyway, then it makes... sense. Oh, you pick. I never saw this. It is you pick. This is YUPIIK microchip. Really interesting. You see, I learned something new. So I will look at this. It looks interesting, and it's always good to see alternatives. So what you did, you added your own layer around UPIC to have MicroProfile Lite, something like this. CDI. Servlets and...
Yeah, basically that's CDI, servlet, and then we promote JSON-RPC as a replacement for GraphQL, basically.
And why you would like to replace GraphQL?
So GraphQL is good because it brings bulk, it brings client orchestration, but it's pretty bad because you just have a single implementation because it's complex. It's a grammar, custom grammar.
And resolvers also painful. You have to implement them.
Yeah. And the server implementation is quite complex because you have to comply with a single library supporting it. And often you will end up with N+1 issue, something like that. With JSON-RPC, it's the same kind of architecture. So you get commands, JSON-RPC request. You can bulk them through an array. But if you need to do an execution plan or a partition plan analysis, you can because it's just JSON. So you do a kind of interceptor or filter, whatever you want. And you can replace the whole execution by a single command. So for example, if you get a bulk of 10 find by ID, you can replace at the execution, the 10 find by IDs by a single find by IDs.
Yeah.
So this way it will be efficient and faster. And you did it under the hood, so the client still sending bad requests with quotes, but the execution on server side is pretty good. So it's very flexible, and since it is JSON, it's pretty easy to work with. So it's a good compromise compared to GraphQL.
What's funny, I wrote a blog post, I gave it to the show notes, and I gave you this in the chat right now. And so what it is, I said, okay, sometimes rest is not worth. This was 3 years ago. And the name of the blog post is making the intention explicit with JAX-RPC over JAX-RS. And I say, okay, if you don't need, the all RESTful stuff, just call the stuff RPC, remote procedure call, and just, do whatever necessary and call it. So everyone knows then, I don't even, try to be RESTful. I would like just to call the method. And why I wrote the post? Because in lots of projects, they say, okay, this is a REST layer. And then you look at the REST layer and all the paths have identical name to the method names. Even the camel case is there. So, okay, what's the point there? And so this is just, to the listeners, I will put it to the show notes. So there is a application path RPC. There are workshops and there's new workshop, delete workshop, get recent workshop. So I don't even attempt to name the path differently. There's always one-to-one mapping to a method. And what I didn't know about that, maybe there's a newer, this JSON-RPC seems to be like a standard. This is JSON-RPC.org, right? This is what I'm using?
Yeah, it's a standard. It's what's behind the scene on VS Code for the completion.
Hey, cool. So this is actually, hey, I have to invite you, more frequently. So I also learn, new stuff. So my stuff was my invention, but I have to write now a post about JSON-RPC. 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 This is what I like because it's at least, explicit. So look, JSON-RPC, everyone knows is like RMI without remote method invocation, without binary part, just via RPC.
Yeah. And the good thing is, so assume you wrote all your business using JSON-RPC endpoint. So think commands. You are using HTTP, that's fine. And at some point, you need to scale more or whatever. You just rewrite the transport. And then you can go on Kafka or JMS or whatever you want. It's the same code. You don't rewrite it. We even have in UShip project a command line integration. So you still write commands. So in terms of business, you write atomic commands and then you can orchestrate them because of the nature of JSON-RPC. So that's really more flexible and powerful than anything else we have. And try to do GraphQL on the command line or on Kafka. That's a pain with the libraries we have right now.
I would say GraphQL is pointless if you are not larger project, because what GraphQL brings is like the standard layer for the UI people, but you need a dedicated team almost which cares, about the resolution of the queries to mapping the queries to the business logic. So because the intermediary layer, there is a lot of stuff to do.
So yeah, what is good with GraphQL is really the fact the client can customize the request, and you are not supposed to modify much the backend, which is never true. And that's and the fact it is not the blocker for me is really the fact it is not customizable, because it has a lot of value to be able to customize the fields you select, the relationships and things like that. But it's really not customizable at all as of today, because you have a single implementation, because the direction they took with the custom grammar is pretty complex. So for me, it can't be an option for a real project. It's probably fine for Node.js guys, because the ecosystem is pretty good, but in Java, it's not that good. So for me, it's not an option. But the intention is good. You can look, I think that's Facebook who did Falcon. It's the same spirit. The client needs to customize the response actually. So they need to add hints to the request to say to the server, I don't want everything, I just want that with this information. We need that today, even in server-to-server communications. So we need a solution. And there is no real standard or simple solution. The best I found was JSON-RPC, and I really like to work with it because it's flexible. It's JSON. Anybody can work with JSON, so you can do whatever you need for your business. So that's really powerful.
What I started with was XML RPC.
Yeah, it's the same spirit.
And then this was actually the funny story. Is do you know actually why SOAP became popular? You don't know whether you remember? No.
No,
so
it was already there.
Okay, so XML RPC started, and then SOAP came after this. So and XML RPC was actually very lean. So it was servlet. You can register, the endpoint, and you call the methods. This was basically, it was great. And the only reason why SOAP and XML RPC became popular, so XML RPC was the backend of block engines. And back then there was a trackback. So if you wrote someone a comment, there was a trackback command, and this was implemented with XML RPC. So everyone had XML RPC. But why XML and SOAP was so popular? Before this, we had binary protocols like RMI or Corba.
Yeah.
They worked great except firewalls. The problem is we had to open, or not we, a different department had always opened ports in the firewall, and this was painful. So SOAP or XML RPC was a legal hack, to call whatever we wanted via the firewall, because we knew port 80 is open.
Okay.
So I was a huge fan of SOAP at the beginning, because at least I know I don't have to wait 6 weeks until I can call the methods. I can just use SOAP and call whatever I like. And the first SOAP was actually fine, and then it started to be crazy. They added whatever ESBs, whatever. This is they lost the origin goal. But this is actually the story, which reminds me. And this JSON-RPC, there are a couple of implementations. This is Java spec. Is it a multi-language Java? Or who is actually behind this JSON-RPC? You know it?
I think Microsoft was not far. They are pushing it a lot.
Okay.
I'm not sure they are behind it.
Yeah, Microsoft also pushed SOAP, interestingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were really behind that.
I think the difference is really JSON. So it looks stupid to say the format is important, but it is because implementing a JSON parser or writer is anyone can do it almost.
Yeah.
Whereas XML is really an issue in some language.
But this is the JSON-RPC.org.
Yeah.
There's lots of Chinese characters here, looks like.
Really?
This is, yeah.
Normally it's English.
Google Groups. Yeah, it is English, but if you click more on it, so you will see JSON-RPC.org, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this spec is older, this JSON-RPC working group. I'm just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but interesting.
There is a GitHub if you want, where there are some discussions, but yeah, the spec is pretty stable, let's say.
No, it's interesting. So I like it because it's a kind of emerging standard. So before I create my own RPC, I would just pick this.
But I think it's 10 years old, something like that.
Yeah, the spec 2 is, but I never heard about that. The spec 2 is 2013, so it's 9 years old. And the origin date is 2009, so it's even older than this. Yeah. Interestingly. Hey, cool. So you are doing actually interesting stuff. So what you did is, and the UPick, I think your platform is already support JSON-RPC out of the box, or you had to integrate this?
Yeah, it's supported. You can run it in standalone, or it's integrated with CDI.
Okay, cool. And how you found this UPick?
So that's my current company, basically.
Okay. So this UPick is actually is a project of your current company.
Yeah, we have some open source project on our GitHub.
And this is cool. So you are actually the committer of UPick.
Yeah.
Hey, they have to say it. So okay, this is interesting. But if you are a committer, it's even more interesting because I know you from the Tommy time and before. So you did a lot of interesting projects. Okay, is it on GitHub?
Yeah. Normally you have a link on the doc website. So the thing is, the company is doing some products, some gateway or to server, things like that. But we are also doing a lot of service. And for the service, we need to have a default stack. Exactly the story you told about the microprofile for you. So we decided to build our own stack. So UShip for the application, Bundlebee for the deployment of Kubernetes recipes. Things like that. So we are building our stack to ensure we control it and we have something relevant for our customers. Because if we just take a default stack like Java EE or Quarkus, we are outside. It's often off the delivery we need to do. And actually, when we look what we deliver compared to using Spring Boot or Jakarta, we are way lighter in general. And that's a good thing for a CV.
Okay, but UPick is a service company. It's interesting because I would suspect that you're building a product and then you need the optimization. But
we do. The product website is not yet up, and it will be another website.
Okay, this makes absolute sense. Otherwise, I will call you crazy. So if you are building multiple projects and you're creating your own stack, and then I say, okay, something wrong. Maybe you are a hobbyist, but there is no relation between the business value and what you're doing. But I took a look at the commits. It is a really small. So you have 200 commits. You are the leader, Roma. And what we should do, I should invite you back next year and just talk about UPick, how it's built from ground up. This would be really interesting talk because. You built an entire new platform, which is no CDI related, and it seems to work. And this is complete different discussion, as before, because this makes sense. Because I wanted to talk with you, it's like, what happens with you? Became a crazy or whatever on Twitter. So but this makes absolute sense. Okay, I think I'm already so curious. I would like to open the UPick and see how it and UShip. This is what I look at. And is uship built on something different, or is it self-contained, this uship? Or are you using different platforms within uship?
It's really just Open Web Beans, Tomcat, and some custom layer on top of it.
Okay, I see. So Apache Tomcat is JSON-B. Okay, cool. This is why. Oh, JSON-B. Is uship supporting Java records, JSON-B deserialization?
Yeah, we are using Johnson for it.
Hey, cool. Really interesting. Anything else to add? I would say this was a really interesting discussion with you.
Yeah, I guess that's already good.
Yeah, it was perfect. So I would invite you next year, because this year is almost over, just to talk about uship. A really interesting thing. But I would like to play with it, start it at least, and then even see you have JSON Web Token support, open metrics. This is actually, you can become an alternative microprofile subset stack, right?
It could, but to be honest, I really like the Node and Go Spirit to just, let's say, you need an endpoint, you bind an endpoint. You don't think about an abstraction first.
No, but they are using already the microprofile APIs.
No.
I mean, CDI, JSON-B,
JSON
Web Token,
core,
open metrics. I mean, this is what I mean. The, how to call it, APIs? Yeah, APIs, right? So, I mean, this is a JSON-B's part. JSON-RPC is new. Actually, it'd be cool to propose to microprofile. I know you're not interested, but this would be something with microprofile could pick, for instance. Yeah, they could. So I liked what it did, how it looks like, and seems to be really lean, and and well maintained.
Yeah, we use it, so we need to maintain it.
Yeah, thank you. Where people can find you on the internet? So of course, upick/uship. If someone would like to commit some patches or make it even lighter, I hope.
Yeah.
They should create pull requests. And what's your Twitter or whatever you?
We have upick and Armani Bucco for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.